A long time ago, before IRs and plugins ruled the land, when plain old solid state amps outnumbered modeling amps, industry giants Boss and Fender joined forces to create what would become known as the Legend series of pedals. But how did they work? Did they sound any good? What happened to them? So many questions. Let's start with how they sound. Faithful viewers of the channel are probably saying, hey, wait a second, didn't you already do this video? Yeah, I did back in November of 21, and I was proud of that video. I put a lot of time into it. It was racking up some good numbers. But when I recorded it, it was winter in the Northeast US, and I was playing a guitar in my basement. Now, maybe you know how to keep cold guitar strings from going out of tune every 5 minutes, but I sure don't. I sure didn't. And I thought, all right, it's just like a little pitchy in a couple sections. Maybe people can get past that. Yeah, no. Pretty much every other comment on that video was about the tuning, that the pedals might sound better if I bothered to tune my guitar once in a while, or that my next video should be a Boss TU2. And obvious trolls aside, they were right. I can do better. This was also before I started doing those little demo jams upstairs, and refreshing the video kind of feels like the right thing to do. So that's that. Let's get to the pedals. This is a series of pedals, and we'll be looking at all three. There's the FMB1, that's a 59 Fender Bassman amp pedal. The FDR1, that's a 65 Deluxe Reverb amp pedal. And the FRV1, a 63 Fender Reverb pedal. The Bassman and the Deluxe Reverb pedal came out in 2007 and ran until 2013. And the 63 Reverb pedal came out in 2009 and had a 10-year run until 2019. They definitely are unique, and they've all got this extra thick textured paint, which I'm guessing is a nod to the covering of whatever they're styled after. It also makes it extra prone to chipping. They've got these boxes, which don't look like anything else Boss has ever done before or since. And check out the control panel and nameplate area. That's just some heavy cross branding right there. I actually kind of wonder if this was Boss reaching out to Fender or Fender reaching out to Boss. But the idea is basically, hey, remember those classics? The 59 Bassman, the 65 Deluxe Reverb, and the 63 Reverb unit? Well, they're back in pedal form. These aren't doing amp simulation as we might expect today. There's no direct out speaker emulation. The recommended setup is to plug this into a guitar amp, which you're going to set up with a fairly flat EQ. So I did that, and here's what it sounds like with no pedal at all. All right, you got that? Now let's start off with the FBM1, the 59 Fender Bassman pedal. This one has my favorite overdrive sound, and you can tell it has some of that tube and transformer compression baked in there, and you'll hear it again in the second song where I used it for the lead part. This one also has a bright input as well, and you can plug into that to give a little more presence in the higher frequencies. Before we go any further, why would someone want one of these instead of a nice regular overdrive pedal? Well, in theory, these pedals are kind of like amp modelers, just without the amp. You supply the amp. And what kind of sense does that make? I mean, the obvious is if you've always wanted one of those classic Fender amps, but doing the money thing. This is a Fender approved recreation in a pedal. So it's something to scratch that itch without putting a major dent in your finances. Or if you're doing like an open mic or you're playing at school or just really any sort of situation where the equipment provided isn't exactly inspiring and you want to transform it more than just adding a distortion or overdrive pedal, you want to change the overall characteristics. Keeping with that, let's try out the FDR1 and see what we think of that. This is modeled after the 65 Fender Deluxe Reverb, heard on countless albums, featured on concert stages all around the world, and now here it is, coming to you straight from my desk. First, let's start out with a clean-ish setting. Same thing, more gain. Now, you probably heard a little bit of an oscillation in there. That's the built-in vibrato. I left it kind of in the middle along with the reverb, and that's something that makes this pedal so attractive. It's like halfway to a multi-effects pedal. It's got the drive, all those EQ options, and a built-in reverb and vibrato. So here's the reverb. And here it is with a whole bunch of vibrato. Just a gentle reminder that Leo Fender is partially to blame for the whole tremolo vibrato mix-up, because that is definitely an amplitude-based modulation we just heard, not a pitch-based modulation. But those amps said vibrato, so at least they're consistent. One more thing about that vibrato. To set its rate, you have two options. Either hold down the pedal while adjusting the vibrato knob, or hold down the pedal for at least 2 seconds, wait for the red-green blinking light, then tap out the tempo you want, and then hold it down again to store it and go back to normal operating mode. Kind of really feels like having a dedicated vibrato knob would have made that a whole lot easier, but I'm guessing 2 is the maximum number of concentric knobs they feel comfortable putting on a pedal. Or maybe they just didn't want the effects to start overshadowing the main amp part. That's perfectly understandable. Though I have to say, I would happily trade in the tap tempo feature for the ability to toggle vibrato on and off with my foot. I mean, at least give us the option to plug in a secondary foot switch for that. You gave the Bassman a bright input. The least you can do is let us toggle the effects. And while I'm at it, if you're using these pedals the way they're intended, with your amp set a certain way, then why even have the foot switch be on and off anyway? Wouldn't you just leave it on? My amp is set all flat. I'm not going to use it like that, right? All right, I'm fine. I'm fine. It's fine. Enough of the whole amp and a pedal stuff. Last stop in our trio is the FRV1. This is not based on an amp, but rather the 1963 Fender Reverb unit. It's a spring reverb unit, which can be a tough style to pull off. Let's see how it does. Yeah, that's just a really good amp-like reverb right there. And I like how it reacts to playing dynamics. I like how it reacts to those ghost notes when you strum while muting the strings. I love how the decay has that metallic resonance, but it still feels natural and real. It's not just the volume falling off in a straight line, it feels like it's transforming into something. Plus, it's not an amp in a box, so no need to adjust your amp specifically to use this one. You can just plug it right in. Let's put it all back together one more time. Now, in the opening track, I use the 65 Deluxe Reverb pedal for both rhythm and lead parts. On this one, I'll be keeping it for the rhythm part, but for the lead, I've got the 59 Bassman into the 63 Reverb pedal with the dwell setting pretty high so you can really hear it do its thing. Alright, so what's the deal with these pedals? Best I can tell, they were meant to leverage Boss's technology with Fender's, well, legacy and do something more than your typical non-trademark infringing silver tweed blackface settings that you see everywhere else, including on Boss's own GP20 amp factory, which came out in 2000. These pedals are kind of the continuation of this, but with a few more years on the technology. These two amp pedals came out in 2007. In 2010, Fender introduced their own line of modeling amps, the Mustang. They also have a new line of pedals, so suffice to say, they probably don't want Boss's help anymore at this point. These pedals, at least in this form, were an in-between step while Fender and Roland got their modeling amp situations all squared away. I think the 63 Reverb pedal could go on just about any pedal board and sound great. The amp pedals, I mean, they do have some great character and they're a lot of fun to play around with, but I think most people looking for different amp sounds today will just go out and buy a modeling amp. Anyway, that's the Legends series. Again. I hope this was fun, I hope it was helpful, and I hope you come back, so make sure you're subscribed, and I'll catch you on the next one.